Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Trend in Mind. As always, we've got something very interesting to talk about this evening. This evening, we're looking at the impact of childhood games on our adult lives. We'll be back with you shortly. Please like and share the broadcast. What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age. This is The Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. All right, we're back. Our opening question. We need to start with you. What was your favorite fairy tale or folk tale, and what about it drew the young Renita to that story?
Fairy tales. To be honest, I didn't really have a favorite fairy tale. I read all of them, but I always liked Jack and the Beanstalk. I don't know if that's a fairy tale, but I always liked Jack.
Yeah, it would be categorized as one. Yeah.
Okay. Only because despite all of the barriers and disadvantages he faced, he was able to overcome. He was able to find ways of beating all of the barriers and the deterrents that were placed in front of him. So I always like when the underdog comes out as the victor. So that's why that one resonated with me.
Okay, that's a great reason to like a story. Michelle, what was your favorite fairy tale, and what drew the younger you to that tale?
The thing is, I never believed the fairy tales, so they just sounded crazy to me. I used to like to hear the older people talk about like the Bear and Nancy, and these stories that they would give you whenever they want you to do something. Huh?
The folk tales.
Yeah, whenever they want you to do something, or the old hag families when they want you to do something or not. But in terms of the liking, I didn't like any of them. I went straight to Enid Blyton. I wanted something a little bit more. I don't like that. I wasn't drunk.
Interesting. What about you, Terrence?
Well, we got a match here, because when you said that, the first thing that came to my mind was the Jack and the Beanstalk story. Like, that's the only one I even remember. You see, so I'm a maybe there's some reason, just like Renita saying that, this sense of overcoming, and a little bit of trickery, and some things look like it might be bad for you, but it's good for you. Your mother, I think the thing was, your mother said to get milk. And then the man give you these beans instead of the milk, and he come back home and he ain't got milk, and people upset. And then he plant them, right? That was the story, right? Then he plant the beans, and one of them grow big, and get he to go into go meet the giant who steal things from them and so on. So yeah, that was the only one that came to mind that I actually remembered in this moment. So I think I have to take that one.
Hi, Jillian. Welcome aboard.
Good night, Jillian.
See you popped in. So, Jillian, what was your favorite?
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. What was your favorite fairy tale or folk tale, and what drew you to that tale? What drew the younger you to that tale?
I can't remember any specific one, but I remember they had Nancy stories, very Nancy stories. There were numerous of them. And I think the one that I remember is the one when they hadn't enough food and he had 2 plantains or something like that. And he divided the plantains between his wife and kids, and there was none left for him. And they said, Dad, what are you going to eat? Oh, you eat, children. And everybody took half of theirs and gave to Dad. So Dad ended up getting half of the food. Was a cunning spider. So that's what came to mind. Very cunning.
Okay. Terrence, happily ever after, and they lived happily ever after. Could you imagine such a state? Do you think such a state is possible?
Why you always ask me these? Yeah, I would like to believe that there's a place where we live happily ever after. But I know that in my own life, I haven't gotten to the happily ever after place yet. So I'm hoping that at some point in the future, I will get to that place. But I can, there's something good about, what it says is that you can aspire to a place of comfort where you feel like, okay, I've done the things I need to do and I have the right program in place. So if I carry this program out, I have the right people around me. I have the right set of things around me that will, if I can hold it together in a nice pattern, then I'll be able to carry it through and I will be happy for a long time. So yeah, I'm not there yet on a personal level. I still wake up unhappily and hopefully not forever after. But I like where I'm moving, the direction in which we're moving. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Michelle, what about you? Can there ever be such a state as happily ever after?
So I believe happiness is a state of mind, and I actually think that it was their way, our ancestors' way of helping us to understand that we should aspire to a state of contentment. So regardless of what the situation was, we should look at it as a form of happiness. Like, how can we make ourselves happy with what we have? How can we make ourselves happy with what we have? This imaginary utopian state of mind that Terrence is referring to, right, is going to keep us in a state of unhappiness for a very long time because, a lot of rich people commit suicide. And you wonder why, right? And sometimes the more people get, the more you want. I'll tell you something. I started working at $40,000 a year in the US. And I mean, way more than 4 times that. And I think I was happier at that state. So happiness is a state of being, and you do things to bring yourself to that state. And whatever your circumstance is, you can better it, of course. I'm not saying you should stay in that circumstance, but you work towards the betterment, but have that satisfaction and happiness with it.
Okay. Renita, someone wrote that, we're human beings, we wire that we're always going to worry, right? And in addition to worry, there's always going to be some element of risk, seen and unseen dangers. So with that, do you think we can ever get to a state of happily ever after? Or is it something that it's just nice to imagine?
I think it is something nice to imagine. Happily ever after in this reality, I don't think you could be totally happily ever after every day. That is an unreachable star, I think. Happiness is a state of mind. You can choose to be happy. It begins with you. So you can choose to decide whatever happens, I am not going to let it worry me, as you said. We were wired to worry. I'm not going to let it worry me. I'm not going to let it stress me out. I'm going to choose to overlook that and think happy thoughts and be happy. However, we know that's not realistic. If you were never sad, then how do you know what happiness is? If you were never stress-free, how do you know what worry is? So I think we need all of the opposite feelings and emotions in order to thoroughly understand and appreciate the other emotion. So if I was never sad, then how would I know what happiness is? I always, when I'm in discussing things with my friends, I always mention if you never had something, you could never miss it. In order for you to know something, you would have had to experience it. So in order for you to know a total level of happiness or euphoria or whatever levels they are, you had to have experienced the opposite end of it to really understand and appreciate what the other end of the spectrum is. So yes, we're always going to worry. If you're a parent, you're always going to worry about your children. If you're an employee, you can always worry if the type of job you're doing. Are you doing your best? Are you going to maintain your job? Is your job sustainable? So all those things, worry is part of life. Happiness and sadness is part of life. They all go together. In order to appreciate one, you have to have experienced the other. So this ever after one state of being is not possible.
Not possible. Okay. Jillian, as someone who passed through, obviously passed through childhood, and you were also a mother. What do you think the writers of fairy tale were essentially trying to communicate to us as kids in this happily ever after? What do you think was the theme or the message there?
I think the message was to look forward to life, because when they write these fairy tales, it always ended and they live happily ever after. And it was to give us this sense that, oh, life is going to be so good. If you find the right person, the right thing, life is going to be, oh, one big fairy tale. But as we grow older, we realize that the fairy tale don't happen every day. Life is about seasons. There's good times and there's bad times, right? There's happy times and there's sad times. We experience all kinds of emotions. And as we need to say, if we don't know one emotion, we wouldn't know what the other one is. So it was good for kids, because just imagine as a child, if they told you the realities of life, think of how damaged we may have been growing up thinking, oh my God, life is going to be so bad. But you have to paint the nice rosy picture to children. And then as we grow older, we experience and realize, you know what? That was just a fairy tale. And the happily ever after was at the end of the fairy tale. And the fairy tale is not reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jillian. Okay, we'll be back shortly with our topic for the evening. We are looking at the impact of childhood games on our lives. All right, so I'll just play a little clip to take you back down memory lane.
Run for life?
Number 4.
When I go in there, I can clean this off nice. You see, you mess up all the cane at the bottom there. But I can chop off the top. And then I can cut up. Joint by joint. Cut up in nice, small, manageable pieces. And then I can sit down by myself and eat. Yes, yes.
There is something I
It is something like. Some people make drink with it, but I mainly just eat them so. Like, they say when this time season, expensive barley, you know. The tree itself, you gotta get stick and knock it down. Cause they got some plimp or something that's boring when you go in the tree.
you'll be all alone, and it's gonna be hard trying to make it on your own. It's only goodbye. This is not.
So Terrence, when last you chew on a piece of cane or pick a dungs right from the tree?
I can't tell when last I do something like that, but I enjoy the piece about the cane right there. You know,
You like the cane, right?
because we you know, I was telling someone a couple of days ago that this is as a child, this was a most important thing. You know, when we lived in North Rhineveld, if you know, people who lived two directions you could go. If you go cross Abribaca Road into South and you go down to the end of the last road in South, Cane View. Actually, that's what it was called, Cane View Avenue.
Yes, it is.
You see, now you understand. So when you cross over Cane, there's some trench there, and you cross over, you into the
Back down.
into the back dam and Cane Wild West. And so you know, we would love to go there after they burnt the cane, and you know, sometimes we would sit on them punts and thing that roll in through the trenches and eat to our heart's content, or otherwise we go all the way down to the back of the end of Abribaca Road, like going, and in the back there there was a place them boys called the Blacker, and once you crossed over again, it's another. I mean, we spend many days walking behind there,
Right,
eating
right.
cane. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't even imagine that you actually did these things now.
Those were natural floss.
Yeah, the right way, right things. Yes,
Those were natural floss.
Someone was talking today about having the sort of the ribbons for flossing, and I thought, well, you know, we didn't really need that much ribbon. We had our own natural flossing on a consistent basis.
Yeah,
right there. Yeah.
That and golden apple, because when you finish with the golden apple, the
Then
seed.
you have the little bristly seeds sitting on the inside. There was something else. Yeah. I think, you know, if I make a semi-serious point, recently I've been going to a store called Wegmans, and they have these cold pressed juices, you know, and so and every single time I go to the store, they probably think something's wrong with me. I'll buy like all of them. And it's like various fruits they've pressed and put in the bottle. And I always imagine, I said, supposing someone went to Guyana and took all these fruits, passion fruit, golden apple, cashew, guava, every last one of them, and just do one thing, just press them and take the juice, put them in the bottle and they would sell it. They would be a very, very wealthy person. Because those things, I don't think you can even imagine the taste of those things. No. Right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. Michelle, did the elder Luard allow you to climb trees? Were you one of those young ladies who climb trees?
No.
Never in a month of Sundays. Never in a month of Sundays. But I have something to show you guys, man. Look.
Oh yeah. You have your
Yeah,
own.
some sugar
I have my
cane.
cane right here. You think it's just a This is serious. I eat my fruits all the time. I get my fruits. You can
Okay.
get them right here in Brooklyn. But
Right.
no,
Right.
I can't climb trees. The story is because I couldn't climb, I always had to end up cooking, cleaning up, washing the wares, doing something for the boys, my cousins who would go up in the tree, because we were 3 girls.
Mhm.
So, my second sister would climb a little bit, but no, I would never, not me.
So
I wa-
I
you
was
never
a tomboy,
experienced you never had that
Huh?
experience of pulling a going in a mango tree and grabbing the fruit and eating it right there. You never had that experience.
I ate the fruit, but not while I was up in the tree, because I never got up in the tree. But they have to have somebody collecting it at the bottom of the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I can
definitely.
start
yeah.
eating while they're at the top of the tree, you see? So I,
Mhm.
I ain't climbing that tree, not me. I ain't falling down. Mm-mm.
How
I
about
was
you, Anita?
I wasn't allowed to climb, but how would they have known? So I should not have climbed the trees, but I did climb the trees, and I climbed the fence with whatever I needed to do to get to at that fruit, that low hanging fruit. I did. I do have some of the scars to show, but
Okay.
Girl, when your parents are teachers, everybody know everybody. Nothing hides. Not
Yeah.
true, Jillian and Terrence. Somebody can tell them.
oh,
You get in
they heard, but I
too
was a
late.
I was a tomboy.
Renita, I hope the trees that you climbed were only tambourine trees and soury trees, because the myth was if a girl climb a tree, the fruit will be sour.
Hola.
No,
I don't know
no,
that one. I
You
never
never
heard that
heard
one.
that one?
I
Yes.
never heard that one
You
either.
don't want
No,
girls
that's what
to
they
climb the
say
trees?
all the time, yeah.
That was their
That's
saying. If girls
interesting.
climb the trees, the fruit will be sour. So that's why they never wanted girls to climb the trees.
Oh my
Oh, that's what
goodness.
it thought. That's what they would tell the
That
girls.
was the saying.
Yeah. Yep. Just like how the cow jumped over the moon
Yeah.
and the little dog laughed.
Yes. Yeah. They said girls rhyme the trees.
You're not buying it?
No, we had guinea, we had mango
Mhm.
trees, we had guavas. I climbed those trees and those fruits was sweet. And as far as I know, they're still sweet. The only tree I did not climb was the dung tree, because as the guy said, those thorns, as we used to call plimpler,
Yeah.
I never played with those. Those you get a stick and you hit. Right. But any tree that was climbable, to me, it was like it was a challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Terrence, you ever heard that saying about the effect of girls on trees?
No, I guess I must have heard it, but not. It didn't stick. But we've discussed before. We come from a very gendered place. I mean, it's we have very, very strong gender roles for boys and for girls, and girls did not climb trees except for the ones who actually climb trees, which perhaps all of them who actually climb trees.
Yeah. I not only climb trees, I went in the back dam quite a lot.
All the time. Yeah, this is
we lived on the back road, Cateview Avenue. So the back dam was just a small
right opposite.
Right in the backyard. So I was in the cane field a lot. You just go in and pick some cane,
and come back.
And especially like the cane after they burn it.
Yes.
And another thing that populated that area was Auntie Desmond.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a lot of Auntie Desmond.
The little couple.
Yeah.
Yes. So we picked a lot of those. So.
Auntie Desmond and the Glamour Cherry. Remember the Glamour Cherry that you used to paste the kites?
Paste the kites, yes.
And I think when they build the houses in South, they strategically left cane. Everybody had a cane tree.
Yeah,
in their yard. They all had cane.
Because Renito, where South is, especially at the back there,
was the cane
field. It was all cane.
I know that. It was part of Rumfeld cane field.
So
Yes.
I think the cane just was left there and it just
yes. So when they build the houses, everybody, because we all had cane in our backyard.
Yeah.
Plants.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Now, it is said that, generally psychologists, teachers, are in agreement that outdoor play, outdoor games, they're important for childhood growth, all right, for different reasons. So we want to look at a few of those reasons and then to identify the games that we played in Guyana that we felt, could best go with that particular reason. Now, an outlet for energy, right? For youthful energy. Terrence, what game you feel that we played back in the day would have been the best outlet for a child's energy?
I think all the games we played were outlets for energy. It just depends on. I mean, I don't think it's a comment on our current lives, right? So if we have children and they've been inside during the pandemic, and you watch them in the house watching TV and playing these video games and so on, and you imagine now, think of your own self. I mean, when we got up, say for example in primary school, and when we got, even in high school, we got to school before school started at whatever time we get. We wanted to get there early so that we would play, playing some kind of game. Some people, them. By the time 8 o'clock, the time they check in the school, they shut already out their pants. It's all messed up. They already doing serious damage to themselves before the day even start, right? So then you take a little break time. So first the little break in the morning, same thing. Then the lunch break, the same thing. Afternoon time, wait. So every single thing that we were doing had a high level of activity attached to it that really, it's unfortunate that our children, in a way, certainly in the United States, I can't speak to, what it would be like in Guyana now if the same rules applied. But, for us, when we were growing up, you see where we all grew into some kind of athletic activity, even if we were not immediately about athletics. It was a natural part of our growing up, and it's something that definitely impacted our social development in ways that we're trying to do with our own children and finding it a bit difficult.
Right. Okay. Renita, looking back at the games, and we know that the act of or the skill of organizing, we would have learned as adults, is a very important skill. Learning having the ability to organize. What game do you think would have contributed to the development of that skill?
Most of the team sports, because you would have had to have the team sports that had various positions. So you would have had to know how to organize, pick your team, choose your team, first of all. Figure who's going to play what positions based on their skills exhibited. Who's going to bring what equipment, things like that. So I would say any sport that required more than one player, more than at least 4 or 5 players, would enable a person to learn organizing skills, delegation skills, So because you have to have a captain, you have to have a leader, you have to be the leader, have to have delegation, have to have the knowledge as to who can play what best, be able to delegate, be able to instruct, be able to motivate and inspire the team to, you play this, you play that, and tell them why they think they can play that, and encourage and support the team. So any team sport, I think, would have equipped us to have organizational skills, delegating skills, planning skills, controlling skills. Those are the things that you need in order to have a successful team. Not that an individual person will not have organizational skill. Individual person or individual contributors, so to speak, would have to be very, very disciplined. Have to be very, very disciplined to perform their individual tasks, train, plan their training and stuff like that. So from a team, I think from the team aspect, the team sport will give you more skills because you will learn delegating skills. You have to observe who is best for the position, things like that. So I think the team sports will give you more skills than an individual sport.
Okay. Children, growing up, did you find, coming off what Renita was talking about, were you a leader? Did you find yourself moving to be a leader, or you were better being just a team player?
Because of I was involved in sports, it was natural for you to be a leader. Because going further back, we just spoke about the sports, the team sports. But let's go back to when we were kids and we played those little games that you had to have teams, like 1, 2, 3 red lights, and they had those games where you had to pick teams. So you had the designated team leaders. I guess everybody knew who was the strongest person. And so you had to pick teams, and you have all the kids there. And then each leader had a turn to pick somebody on their team. And then you started to pick the strongest person first. And I remember as a child, we talking about socialization, how games help us to socialize, and leadership skills and all those things that Renita said, because it didn't matter who your friend was. You wanted the strongest person on your team. So the persons who were the strongest got first pick. And I remember now, reflecting back as a child, there were some people sitting there just praying, please pick me, pick me, pick me. Sometimes they put it up their hand, pick me, pick me. It's like, you didn't pick, you're the last. Right? And there are people who want to be on a certain team because they know that person is, I want to be on Julian's team but I'm not on my team. So who had the first pick usually got the best people. Right. So yes, so even going way back to those days, we were able to identify who were leaders, who were, I don't want to say followers, but who are the stronger persons back then.
Okay. As an educator now, Michelle, when you look back, which of the games we played as children do you think would have best contributed to our cognitive development?
Go.
I think a lot. But the one you just showed, Dog on the Bone,
yes,
I think has great correlation skills, because you have to look at your opponent, time your opponent, run, be agile, pick it up, move it back. And Stall Out was very similar. A lot of people, Stall Out came late to me though. I didn't really know Stall Out very early, but Stall Out would also, because you had to pass a number of persons as you navigated, and you had to think as you move. Quite a few of them, because circle tennis, when you hit that ball, based on how far the ball is gone, you have to coordinate with your team members to know if we're running and when you're stopping, because you need to be at that peg before you stop. And that kind of hand brain coordination is always very good for students. Not to talk about the impact of diabetes on all your organs, including the brain, and the fact that when you are stagnant, you don't move enough, you end up having childhood diabetes. And so all those games that we played allowed us to eat all the fruit and all the rice that we love to eat, and still have a 23-inch waist and a 22-inch waist, because you jump in that skipping rope, that Chinese skipping up to your hip, and you're jumping in and you're playing all those games. And so that movement, try doing it now. Try it now.
Terence, do you recall being particularly irritated by someone who kept being confrontational? Either if they're playing cricket and they're out, they're never out. No, And can you remember how you would have dealt with confrontational situations?
Yeah, well, I think this, as Michelle was saying, we developed lots of good interpersonal skills because people learned how to behave themselves in appropriate ways. As you know many times, sometimes let's take a game like cricket that you play on the road frequently, and so you need a little bit of equipment to play. You need a bat, a ball, and usually sometimes it would be that one person, he's got or she's got a little more, and they have a bat and a ball, and they come. And they might not necessarily have been the best player, right? And then they get out, and then they start saying, "Well, I want my thing. I want to go home with my," they're taking the bat and the ball, and they want to go home, and this kind of stuff. So, we grew up with lots of people like that, and we learned the character, and we learned how to, as a group, impose a certain kind of, say, well, if you want anything, take your thing along your way, or if you want to play. You're playing, and you gotta follow. You gotta follow. If you want to go in your house and play by yourself, you could go play by yourself. Yeah. Or if you're playing with me, you gotta play in the appropriate ways that would be fair to everybody, and so on. So I mean, we learned a lot from. It's amazing how much we've learned in those little interactions as we were coming along in our street. People who you hit the ball in their yard. You can't go and get it. The game done when the ball go in the yard. Nobody can. These kinds of things, So
miserable people.
You remember when you broke someone's window? However, disappeared.
People probably
everybody would come off the road. Everybody would.
Everybody down inside.
We said scatteration.
So we learned how to manage ourselves. We learned what's appropriate behavior, what's not appropriate behavior. Even the people who are behaving bad. Yeah. No, it's amazing. I mean, you were just asking about these cognitive things, and I was just thinking about all the little the things. I mean, I'm sure the girls did this. All the little things about, we used to play these games where we're playing for rubber bands, like a kind of little gambling, but the gambling is with rubber bands, and we'd have these little rubber bands tied up another. We call them quanks. We'd have little quanks of rubber band that we walk around with, playing, like, with mouche. You remember this one? We had like a little button and some corks, and we'd spin them around and bet on all those little things. They created some small understandings about the world, probabilities, which one is it in, how not to get fooled by people, these kinds of things. It's a big education going and learning, these little things, even playing cards too. Remember we play a lot of cards.
Right. Rap and Romy.
Rap and Romy, and War. This was another game that we would play a lot, and then even the little board games.
Snake
Ludo,
and ladder, Ludo.
Snake and ladder. All these little things.
Ludo.
Teach you coming together as a group, enjoying a particular activity together, following the rules. Everyone understand the rules is the same for everyone. You can't just make up your own rules for yourself. The game has rules, So, yeah, it's interesting that we don't get. In a way, this is the one thing I think. Sometimes we have to think about this as sort of, immigrants in American context, how to carry through these kinds of things, because we see now how important these things are, and how to push these things through to our, to our children and to our grandchildren and so on. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm gonna ask Renita and Jillian. I just bought some rackets, and I'd asked Audrey Dorn because I want my students to play circle tennis.
Oh, okay.
So the two gentlemen gonna help me build that. I'm gonna get the wood from Home Depot, and we can build a wicket. And be showing them circle tennis, because I think so many people can be involved in it.
Yeah.
At one time, and it's really
it's so much fun.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. And Terence, you never cheated.
What I want to ask, do they even play those games? Circle tennis and field hockey? Do they even play those games anymore?
They hardly do. You know, you hardly see people playing, you know, on the streets.
Yeah.
You know.
I want to read a comment that David made. He said, childhood games in many ways bring out talents, but just as Terence mentioned, it can also bring out certain weaknesses that may stick with that person for quite a while if not addressed. And I remember there's a particular game we liked to play when we were in our club. It was called Buzz, and it was really a math game, knowing your timetable 7.
Yeah.
It was called Buzz. Anytime you came to the number 7 or multiple of 7, you didn't call the word, you said buzz. We started counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buzz. So they had some people didn't like that game at all because you had to be quick, you had to be thinking, you know. And it's like David said, some people probably were messed up from the past with some of those games that they were not good at. Who knows if it wasn't addressed? Because we just took things for granted back then. You know, so it could very well be that some people had some issues that were never addressed.
No, this is absolutely true. There's no question about that. And I mean, I think that that's the thing that we've learned. These things have been very, very good for us, but they were tilted in a particular way, right? So they always favored a particular kind of, you know, they favored a particular kind of expression. And over time, I think we've learned that in a better way that we, you know, there are people who, you know, had particular skills, but they were not being expressed in the setup that we frequently used as ways in which we would do things, right? I mean, yeah, I'm in complete agreement with that.
Yeah.
And
Similarly,
that we've learned. Yeah.
Similarly, you had the overachievers.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call name, but I'll look in the mirror.
Yeah.
That never like to lose.
Never like to lose.
And I had to learn that it was okay
to lose,
to not bring first. It was okay to not win. So you had the flip side.
Yeah.
That you would go home upset and re-examining it. What did I do? How did I lose that race? What did I do wrong? How couldn't I score a goal in hockey? Or, so you also had folks like me that had to learn that it was okay to lose. You don't always win everything. So as a teenager, that was a lesson that I had to learn that, hey, you're not that good. You're not going to be on top all of the time. And I'm glad that I learned it because it was something that I was able to transfer into my adulthood, that it's okay to lose. You're not going to win. You're not going to be number 1 all the time. You're not going to be in the top 10 all the time, So that was something for the flip side that, like I call myself, overachievers or people who set high bars. I had to learn to set realistic goals, realistic bars, and to accept failure and accept losses.
Renita, let me ask you something, Renita, on that point. What about if you had somebody on your team that caused the team to lose? How did you deal with that?
The Renita then?
Yes. Well, and that brings us back to the point that David made, because I remember vividly during athletics back home, what you call school sports. And I was short in the relay. I was short of one person for my team. I was the house captain and for the relay, and I was short one person. I didn't have a person for my 4x1 relay. So my friend, very good friend, eventually said, "I'll do it for you." So I said, I'm going to start this relay because I was the fastest, because I know I don't have a strong team. So let me start and give them a head start. So I started, I was way ahead. Second leg was way ahead. Third leg, I put my friend at the final leg. I said, okay, everybody will give her a good. Man, she ran that race up dead last. So you can imagine. That was my friend, and now I'm thinking back. I could see she was upset, but I think I was more upset than her.
Right.
So, and now I'm thinking back. I probably made her feel bad. Everybody made her feel bad. She was sad, and
I
now I
can't
feel
relate to that.
that. Huh?
I can't relate to that.
Oh, I relate to that as something I never forget.
No.
So,
No.
so we probably hurt some people's feelings back then very badly.
Yeah.
I mean, last is one.
Well,
one dead last is another thing, which means
Dead
there's
last. She
space
was late.
between
She
right,
got
there's space between you and the second to last person.
yeah.
That's not good enough.
She got the baton first, way ahead of everybody. Everybody, she was like,
I mean, you guys are afraid to say it, but that's time for fight. That's not good. No, Not happening.
I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I was lucky to never had those experiences.
No, I had 1 year. I had that. I was just short of one person. And looking at her running the race, she was like going in slow motion, and everybody was just coming and pass her. And these first to pass her, I was dying a slow death. Yes. It was funny at the time, but
these are the lessons learned,
so
right?
bad.
So
I was hurt, but
we learned how
guys,
to manage this sort of kind of failure. I said the one other thing I would always, as I've been thinking about it as we're talking, it always seemed to be like there was a season to it. Like, so, like there was a time in school when everybody's playing gum.
Yeah.
There's a time when everyone's playing chinkabot.
There were seasons.
Yeah,
there were seasons.
I don't know if it was a signal what exactly used to happen, but at some
tell
point,
the gum season was when the kuru was in season.
So maybe this is when the fruit is in season, then you get a set of tasks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What was the name of that fruit again? It was not Owara.
No, Owara.
Kuru.
Kuru
is the one where you get the proper marbles.
Kuru, you call it, yeah.
Yeah. And then we'd have all sorts of little details about the
Kuru. No, it's not Kuru.
Kuru was the short name.
It don't sound like Kuru.
It's Kuru, yeah.
Yes.
Stop making up your own fruit, don't it?
Well, I grew up saying Korea.
Or something.
Korea.
You're thinking about the people at the store. I know.
Yeah.
Kuru. This is the one that we used to make the task of playing.
The big one.
The big marbles.
The big marbles. The Owara, the ones are smaller.
And then you also use the kuru seed to start to make a ball for cricket. Remember,
when you put the inside of the paper
over it, and then you put the rubber.
The tube from the bicycle.
And y'all said y'all had no entrepreneurial skills. You had it. You just didn't.
No. The thing
You made
was,
it all,
there was
right?
a whole set of things that you learn how to do, right? Yeah, it's not just.
Everything was recyclable. Everything.
Teaching you things.
Rubber bands.
Yes.
Yep. Everything was recyclable. Yep.
I want to share a
our
quick
own
story.
toys.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Julia made me remember this man in the stand at school sports with his son. The son started the 400 meters way ahead of everybody else. Way ahead. And the man is, you see my son? That's my son. That's my son. As we get to the 200 meter, he starts slipping back. The man says, Dad, he ended up bringing dead last. The man is saying, that my son. That's what that reminded me of. That's
yeah, that was a memory that can't leave me at all.
Master done.
Yeah, no. I do think these games have, they taught us, like as we are just reminiscing on them now. You see how many little details.
Yeah.
Everything. So like even when we, like the one that we play Chink about. So we play them with slates, and then we play with little pieces of lead, or we play with a brick, and you'd have like a brick with you that you've been honing. It has special characteristics so that it gets you the kinds of results that you need in various conditions. If you're playing on mud, or if you're playing on the road, or if you know, there's a whole a whole series of things that you're learning, but
Right.
it's not some curriculum that you're writing out. It's a set of things you're learning how to problem solve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mentally.
Experimental learning.
and
And
you
do
learn
you guys
experiential
remember?
learning. You're learning how to do things.
Yeah, the games we played when we couldn't go outside when it was raining. You remember any of those? I remember that one we played when you had you got to write boy, girl, fruit, country, animal, and you start with a letter, and then you had to write a name of something for all those different headings that we had. So that was like some thing you had to think a lot about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Country, a fruit, an animal.
Yeah.
And be able to make up names that sounded close to something they would hear, but started with something, right? So you could.
Some of us used to make up names, and then we argued that's not a country, that's not a real animal.
And you go for those old encyclopedia
to prove. Yes.
Yes, and Jack's, Michelle Tracy saying Jack's in the thing.
Yeah, Jack's, yeah.
I see Marcia was a tomboy. She knows the right way to tell it.
No, but you see, the point is some boys play jacks too, not a lot, but
yeah, some boys play jacks.
But exactly, just like how girls were not supposed to.
I played.
Boys.
I played. What was it? Gam or taw? What was it called? Gam.
Gam.
Gam or taw.
Both. Depending
so what
on.
was taw? What was taw?
So the tar is the
tar is the marble.
The marble.
The tar is the marble.
That's the tar. And you played gum with the tar.
They played gum with the tar.
But you see, even so now that we're saying this, right? Someone should actually check. See, what's the meaning of the word gum? Where it come from? What's tar? Why that was such a normal word? We have no idea. Maybe that's just some word that's come down from some place. Yeah. But is it tar? Is marble? But in what language? We would always just say it, right?
Right. Okay. Michelle, you wanna there's a viewer asking a question. You wanna take that one?
David.
The question?
David, he said, could the panel comment about these games as part of our cultural expression and how we can preserve them? I don't know what is the heritage of some of the childhood games, but now I do wonder where some of them came from.
Right. I'm not sure what's the heritage of the childhood games. I was trying to find the name Gam just now. I saw it's the name of a lady. It describes the leg of a lady or a piece of object. I was trying to figure out what's the origin. I looked for it in other languages. But in terms of preserving the games, I do believe we should. Not only should we preserve the games, you know, the scooter, you remember we used to scoot with those legs?
Yeah, and that was a piece of engineering.
You see, exactly, but you know, we don't have the patent for it. You know, the steel pan of Trinidadian doesn't have the patent for it.
I read about that some years ago.
So it would be a great idea to really preserve some of those games and the rules. It took me a very long time to get the rules for rounders for circle tennis. It took me a very long time. And I think Saul Out and Dog and the Bone and 1, 2, 3 Red Light and, you know, the hopscotch, Chinese games.
Right.
I think
there was one Red Rover calling.
Red Rover. Yes, you know, those things were fun. And it made you think, it made you learn. We didn't think about it as learning, but it was learning. And it was learning that remained with us forever. So I agree, David, and it's something maybe that's what we should really look into doing, Andy.
And we got, and not only that, we got our social skills, our socialization skills, and our social skills were started then. You know, you were either introverted or you were extroverted or you were a team player or like Terrence said, some people, when they were bowled out, they pick up their stuff and went home, things like that. So selfish and things like that. So, like I said, a lot of social skills we got from those games.
Yeah, but I would be remiss if I don't address this. It is yes, it worked in terms of social skills with some people, right?
Mhm.
It also affected the social skills of other people. And it was more of a popularity and a class thing. So if you were within a particular class or you were popular for something, of course you would be comfortable, and of course it would enhance your social skills, possibly at the expense of another person's social skills. And no one addressed that. So there are some people who, when they have migrated to the real world, or even as Guyana has developed more, they have found themselves in where the only time they feel valued is when they get back to their 15, 16, or to their church. Because now that they're outside of that society where you had to come and find your way and make yourself who you are, they couldn't really do that. So whenever you talk to them, they're still stuck in terms of cognitive development back at when they were 15, 16, right? Because that's when they felt good about themselves. And if there's one thing that I think should be corrected, there's a balance. I don't believe that kids should not make jokes totally, but there is a balance. We should look and see how people deal with it. Some people appear to be okay and they're not necessarily okay, but you'll see from their actions the next time, because they may move away from you or they may not want to be with you. So while maybe all of us did benefit from it who were on this panel, but there are a lot of people who would have been destroyed and who still feel intimidated by certain things. And so those are the aspects that we need to look at. I would love to talk to either the young man I described or the young woman that Jillian described and find out what was the impact of that, if any, of that rape, if any. Never know.
I remember in her face, she was very embarrassed, but at the time I was in my feelings, so she wasn't important. And when you say that, Michelle, it took me back to what I was saying earlier when we were picking teams in any one of those games. You would see those kids that would be begging, pick me, and they will be the last to be picked. So those could be the ones that you're talking about. They weren't strong. They weren't, they were the weaker ones in the group. So it could very well have had an impact on them. And as kids, I find kids are very cruel because they don't understand things, So if somebody's saying some kids were left out of certain games because they were considered not good for the game, that's true. Yes, if you didn't think they were strong enough, you didn't want them a part of the game, even if they were your friend.
But that happens today. How many people sit on the bench almost every game? In basketball, in football, in soccer, in baseball. Some people are just bench warmers.
Yes, and a lot of them turn to drugs. A lot of them end up using drugs. A lot of them mess up their lives. A lot of them, listen.
Even the top players use.
In any case, Renita, if I get him paid $1 million to sit on a bench, my self-esteem is not going to be damaged.
But that's you.
You think so? You think so?
But that's you. It goes both ways. I am not going to generalize and say the bench warmers use. A lot of the ones who are the top and the star use also. So I'm not going to generalize as to who use and why they use. But I'm saying that that's another thing we all have to learn in life. I told you I had to learn that earlier. We all can't be number one. And I have learned at an early stage. I know you have to know thyself.
Yeah.
Know where you can excel, where
Yeah.
you can fit in. And I was one of those. I could care less if I wasn't invited, if I wasn't included. And today it's still that part of me, you know. Looking back, I think a lot of the you attended events and you attended games and you participated in games you were interested in. There were kids who would play chess and play all those other games that boggled my mind.
Mhm.
And I would stand there and I would watch, but I never felt any way like not, not included. I was in awe of those kids, but I didn't feel like, oh, something is wrong with me because I can't play that. So like you said, when we were at that age, no one taught us these things.
No.
We never knew that because I can do this better than you, it made somebody feel bad. We never knew those things. There's a lot of things we're learning now, and a lot of things that we learn in our 20s that, for me, a lot of things that I learned after I left school that I may have done that could have hurt people. But during that time, we did not know. Everything was a joke to us.
Yeah.
It was a joke. Oh, she can't play. She pagally or he pagally. Things like that. That's what we would label them, but we did not know it was hurtful.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times, as you said, I would watch other people excel at certain, like table tennis and badminton, and I would admire them, but it wasn't something that interested me, and I never felt but I didn't mind watching them. So like you said, look, today there's a lot of people that sit on the bench. They get to play when the clock is almost going to expire and there's no way that the other team could come back and beat them. And I'm sure I don't know how those people feel. It would be interesting for somebody to interview those people and actually see how they would feel. It would be interesting, like Jillian, for us to interview that young lady, interview the person that Loretta, just so that we could understand how we made those people feel back in the day. It would be interesting.
Because if you think about some of the people that were very timid, they were not too social, they were very quiet. It could have been because of some of those, exactly what we're talking about right now. They were scared because they probably didn't know what they were good at or if they were good at anything. So they were very timid and scared.
But I do believe that everybody is good at
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope, and I try to rack my brain, I look back and I hope that I never ever made anybody feel diminished or feel they're not worthy or feel that they were not included. I know many a times I've encouraged people, you can do this, just try. I know I was one of those type of people. You can do it, because I always had this thing that if I can do it, anybody else can do it. So I know I was always one of those people trying to encourage people and trying to motivate them to do the same. Just try. I used to tell them, try,
Okay.
So.
All right. Terrence, war break. Do you think war break would have contributed to anything that we could have used as adult men?
Unmute, Terrence.
I said yes, to win the war, to learn that there are wars and you have to fight them, and this was a training for a little later when you have to figure out how to hide yourself, how to hide yourself and find other people who are hidden, and more broadly protect yourself. So I think, as we sit here thinking, we realize now all of those games had a very clear logic to them, but we didn't understand that then, and it was David sort of asked about this. I think this is all part of maybe the cultural logic, right? It's sort of saying our young people have to learn certain things, and in a natural way, they learned these things in these games, and it was part of the culture, and this was broad curriculum for the life that we were supposed to live out. So War Break, is certainly a game that taught us certain things that, sometimes you have sides and these sides go to battle and you have to figure out, and that's normal. And, it's completely normal. And I think that that's something that we should not that we should not poo-poo. The world is not always, as someone said, if you don't shoot first, you can die. But this is true, right? And we've seen many examples of it, right? So I think we have learned a number of things in these games. Yes.
Right.
And today's society, that's not a game that we would advocate, and especially with the toy guns and stuff that they used to use.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, I mean, this is so. You know what you just said, toy guns, and I remember. You remember we would have guns at Christmas time with caps. Do you remember this? We'd have like little. We'd have some, and some of the caps were better than others, like the green caps and the red caps. And right now, obviously, you don't want your kids playing maybe this game, but there's something to be said. We live in societies have big armies, and I mean, there's some people who like these sorts of games, and maybe everyone should not like it. Removes from us the sense of self-preservation, which sometimes is an important thing. So, I look back on it and I think we have, there's some, I'll give an example. A question of guns, right? So, obviously we've grown up in a culture with very little training with guns beyond, unless you're someone who went into the bush and actually your gun training was exactly this. At Christmas, you get a gun and a socket and you get some caps and you play with it. And then after this, a few years ago, I was living in Denver, Colorado. And in Colorado, the gun culture is quite, and I sat there thinking to myself, you know what? I'm here completely without a gun and without any skills. And all around me, people have guns. And one night, I kid you not, one night I was having a drink at a little bar close to my house. And this gentleman was sitting there, and he had, those shirts that they have that, keep calm, carry on, this, yeah. And his one was sort of like, keep calm, I'm armed. And I made a joke. Thought I was making a joke with him, saying, "Man, look, I don't feel calm. The fact that you're sitting here in a bar with me having a beer and you have a gun with you." And he started to escalate, and I quickly left. But it struck me that there are moments when you need to be able to protect yourself, and those games, as we've just, were kind of teaching us that lesson that. Sometimes there'll be two sides and there'll be a war, and so you have to figure out how to. And we shouldn't always assume that there's not going to be a war. And I think when we leave our children having the thought that there's not going to be a war, then they're sitting ducks for people who sort of, don't mean them well. So, while I sometimes understand the logic, I think we should always reserve the right to not allow ourselves to be vulnerable in a way that does not allow for us to protect ourselves appropriately. And I say that just given my own lived experience, not a big theory, but saying, I don't want to be in a bar with all the people having guns and I'm the only person in there who does not have one.
That's a big topic all on its own.
But maybe that's what our ancestors were teaching us with the war break. War will break, and when it does, be prepared.
The war will break at some point, right?
Yes.
Michelle, did Dolly House contribute anything to motherhood, to you understanding motherhood?
Maybe it did, and maybe that's where my issues with motherhood come in, because I couldn't play Dolly House. My mother had her own theory about Dolly House. So if Dolly House was to be played, it was going to be played between the three of us, the three girls in her house. There was no Dolly House and you hiding and me and you husband and wife and cooking no food and nothing like that. But in a way, when I think back, maybe it taught some females to cook. I would not be the best person to address that. Um, I I don't think it's a game that I would want my daughter playing, not because of any abuse or anything, but I believe that we are at a point in life where, while I do believe every organization should have a head, and I agree, I will go along with the head being the male, but I want to equally feel that the female is the neck, which turns the head.
Yeah,
And
okay.
so there's an importance in how we perceive each other in a relationship, and it should not be this domesticated thing where somebody has to cook and clean and you come in and you eat and leave your plate, and then they pick it up and then they wash it up and then they attend to the babies. Where is the love, so
Yeah.
no. Mm-mm.
Okay. How about you, Jillian? What did Dolly House explain
Okay.
anything about motherhood?
Well, I did not play Dolly House because I grew up with three brothers, so war break was my thing.
Okay.
I did not like dolls. I could remember my mother being very worried. This child does not like. I could remember hearing she telling a friend, um, I think probably it's the white doll she don't like. She said I bought a black doll and she still don't like it. So I was never the Dolly House type. I had three brothers and all the games that they played because we were around the same age. So I played with the boys and I read my books, but nothing along the line of Dolly House never interested me. So Renita probably can attest to that, how it because I wasn't a
let me
Dolly House girl.
let me say something though.
Hmm.
Up here, I just remember when I was in high school, as a teacher in high school up here,
Hmm.
I they had a program that they would give the young girls a doll to walk with,
Hmm.
and they had to take care of that doll as though it was their child. They had to
Hmm.
leave and feed the child. They
Yeah.
had to change the child. They had times when the child had to change their pampers and all of these things. And it did turn off a lot of kids from this teenage pregnancy thing where they were anxious to have this baby in their mind that was such a nice thing.
Mhm.
So maybe there is some psychology in the dollhouse.
When you say that, Michelle, I remember my son I think it was middle school. They had to do that doll stuff, and the boys had
Hmm.
to do it too.
Yeah.
But the purpose of them learning that it is about teenage pregnancy as well as the cost. How much
Hmm.
was the cost? They had to do an actual project and
Hmm.
find the cost. How much it was to take care of a child for a year. So, and I remember that project. He had this baby man, and he played right along with it. I had to go buy a doll and the whole 9 yards, and he had to take care of it and everything. So, not only over here was not only the girls, it was the boys too.
Hmm.
But back
No,
home,
it's here, but it's here. But no, I was
back home,
chemistry.
I guess the Dolly House was in preparation for us to be mothers, but I never paid attention to that.
Right.
Unita could say what her Dolly House was if she was loud.
Mhm.
No, I was a tomboy. Dolly House was. I was always in the yard. I was
Yeah,
always running. I was always playing. We didn't do no Dolly House.
but
Terrence, you play Dolly House?
so you were, you
I mean, there was benefit in boys playing Dolly House, right? That's why my brother didn't want me to play. Terrence, you play Dolly House?
This is where the Guyanese
Or
gentleman came
doctor,
in, right?
doctor and nurse.
Dr. Nurse.
On this panel, all the women did not play Dolly House,
No, I
and so
didn't.
the one will certainly not play Dolly. Even if he did play Dolly House, he didn't play. Not at all.
But see, looking from the comments, some of the comments, what I'm seeing here, people saying a lot of parents never allow them to play Dolly House. I never I never realized that. Cindy was saying the only dolly house they played her mother was the security. I never knew there was a problem for kids to play dolly house. I guess because I never played dolly house, but I'm sure there were a lot of parents were skeptical. But I remember once my grandmother over here telling my cousins they wanted to go and hang out with the other cousins, and she was saying, "No, you're not going because cousin and cousin make dozen." So I guess that's what the whole concept of the dolly house. They didn't want the kids to play dolly house because sometimes you played with your cousins. Your cousins were your first playmates. So I guess they had their own thing going on in their head what this dolly house did.
Okay, we're gonna wrap things up. This is the final with the final question now. As we look at adults now, especially our political leaders, both over here in the US and in Guyana. Terence, you know, you look at somebody like a Trump. Is there anything that we can decipher about their childhood days from looking at the manner in which they act as adults? Yeah, you're muted.
My immediate thought of someone like Trump is he's the guy who had a bat and a ball, and every time he out, he pick up his bat and the ball and he gone home. And at some point, people say, okay, if this is how you want to do it, stay home and don't bother come back, play nothing with anybody here. And I think you can see that. You can see people's character is informed by the games and the learning that happened, the interpersonal dynamics that that accrued in those games and the learning that came from it. And I think that's one of the ways in which, we've mentioned these things, the sall out, the various, things that we, the 1, 2, 3 red light, the Chinese skipping, the gum, the chink about, the one we didn't talk, catcher. We didn't say anything about this one. They're like catching people and, the hopscotch and all these little various things, the ones that we played inside. No, those things allowed for us to develop a certain kind of interpersonal dynamic that is reflected in the people who we see in front of us today. We learned we learned how to pick teams properly. We learned how to not pick teams on nepotism, not pick person because they're your friend. And if they're the weakest person, they'll get on the last leg and go from first to last really quick. We learned these things. We learned how, even if we want to win all the time, we know that, we're not going to win all the time. It's like Trump. You asked me about Trump. I'm a winner. We're just going to win. Well, anyone who's grown up in a normal environment understands that some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose, and you have to learn how to manage the time when you're up and when you're down, and keep an even keel going forward. So I do think those things have been very, very valuable for us. The question I keep coming back to, and I'm gonna, maybe this is something for, it's a question of, how those games, had the historical origins, the cultural sort of heritage and the things that are located in them. It'd be nice. I'll probably go look up and see whether or not I can find sort of an anthropologist who's studied these things in the context of Guyana and has something deeper to say. But it's clear to me that these are things that are very vital, and I would encourage, folks in Guyana to sort of preserve these items. And actually, I'll say one. Let me put a plug in for the people who do the Atlanta Carnival. So there's a Guyana Family Fun Day that they hold during the Atlanta Carnival, and they have, for many years actually, they have tried to do all those things that we like they have maypoles and all those sorts of things that we've done for a long time. So I think we need to develop more sites where people, it'd be nice to have as part of our folk festival day, some games where people come in and, we have a little thing along those lines to remind people of the rules and the other things that are associated. But yeah, I think these are very, very valuable experiences for us. And I think the good people that you see in front of you is a reflection of our participation in the games that we played.
Okay. Michelle, in your role as a principal, and as a teacher, how do you deal with the child who, from your observation, obviously is having a hard time at play, right? How do you, and how would you advise a parent to deal with such a child?
So generally, we would get the child involved in different activities, and also provide counseling for that child. It depends, because sometimes there are mild cases where you can have conversations with them. You can put a few of their peers together and you can have a conversation. And then there are deep-rooted cases that you have to seek professional help, which would come in the form of the guidance counselor. And if it doesn't stop there, then it may have to go to the psychologist or the social worker. But I wanted to throw something in with for what Terence said. While I agree with what you're saying, Terence, in terms of the panel here, possibly, Andy asked about Guyana and the US, and we addressed. And I'm going to ask what happened to the games we played in the context of Guyana, because the impact it is supposed to have, did it have it? Or is there, what happened? Something had to happen, because there are definitely gaps in terms of the political arena, and Guyana is very close to becoming a one-party state. And I've never, in the line of games, I don't recall a time where even a losing team became non-existent, because of something. So I would like to understand what happened and where is that gap. And I mean, it's for a deeper conversation, but I think sports is supposed to have an impact, and these games are supposed to have an impact. But what happens? Where is the gap? What happened? Something had to happen.
Yeah.
And did it happen with Trump? Or is there something else, like what you were saying? It's a deeper conversation that we would have to have around that.
Okay. Well, this has been a very fun evening, I think, reflecting and looking at these things. Renita, before you close us out, you could let us know if you were part of a Mean Girls gang, and then you can close us out this evening.
He was the popular girl gang.
I was never part of a Mean Girls gang. Never. I keep telling people, I never realized I was popular. I never set out that I'm going to be popular. I just like athletics. I just like sports. I did it. And like I said, anything I do, I aim to be the best at it. So I don't think I was ever mean to anybody. I didn't like bullies. I didn't like people who took advantage of other people. I would be the one that would try to solve people's battles and intercede myself to make peace, find peacemakers and stuff like that. But then again, I didn't allow anybody to run over me either. So for me to be like the starter of fires and stuff, no. But I would end the fire. I would put it out. And I would defend myself. And I would defend others if I see them being taken advantage of. Especially my sisters. I protected my sisters dearly. I really didn't let anybody take advantage of my sisters. And even some cases when my mom, when she became older and she wouldn't defend herself for certain things, I would defend her. So no, I wasn't mean. I wouldn't start a fire, but I wouldn't back away from helping to put it out either. So I'll put it like that.
Okay, let me put in one thing that you did that you're not admitting to. She was the one that would laugh the hardest if anything went wrong with someone.
Oh, yeah. I if something is funny, you would know because I would laugh and you would be all the way the other end of the block.
Very distinctive laugh.
And you will know that it was me who was laughing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was little laughed.
Yeah, and the laugh, like, you know, like if somebody, like I said, when we were growing up, a lot of things we didn't know. If somebody fell down, and you as a child, you thought it was funny or you know, so you would laugh and then you go and help them, right? So
yeah, but wasn't that the culture? You knock your foot if you get nailed, stick with a piece of wood and you continue playing. That was the culture, right?
Yeah.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
No, listen, she just didn't laugh. She laughed. So,
everybody know that. Everybody who's been around me, close. You see, only your friends tell your business, huh? So only people who've been around me know that laugh. You know, so, and you know, like if you're in a let's say you're in a situation, like somebody's doing a speech or somebody's doing something and something funny happened and you trying your best not to laugh because you're sitting in the audience. And the more you try not to laugh is the more, you know, I would be that one to have to excuse myself and walk away because I can't control
it.
Yeah.
All right, we need to close this out and
yeah.
Get us moving.
All right, once again, thank you guys. This was a very enlightening panel. Like I really didn't know the difference between tar and gam. I thought tar, you know, that's the whole. I thought the names were interchangeable. So I learned that tar is actually the equipment, and gam is the name of the game that you play. Yeah. So yeah, very enlightening. It took me back to my childhood, and sometimes I tell my children that I would never trade my childhood for nothing in the world, because I think that's what built up a lot of our immune system. Some of us, our socialization skills, our thinking skills, or competitiveness. You know, so. Yep, you guys took me down that road, and I thank you so much again for giving up your time, Dr. Blackman, Dr. Luard, Jillian. You know, all of you guys have very demanding roles. I thank you very much for giving it up. Andy, thank you for hosting. And as usual, thank you for our viewers who participated and commented and liked. Thank you so very much for spending your evening with us. Thank you all once again. Have a great evening and stay safe.
Good night.
Okay. Good night, all.
Good night.
Take care. Okay.
What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age.